Hey everyone, welcome back to CIS 39. Today we are going to talk about Lesson 18, which is a presentation from the Game Developers Conference on how to create an effective online portfolio. It's a really great talk and it's really important, especially if you plan on getting in the game industry, because pretty much everything now is done online and submitted in some type of digital format. Also today we're going to talk about the final project. I'm going to go ahead and download the proposal right here. We're going to take a look at that and see what I want from you guys on that one. Let's go ahead and start off with lesson 18. Like I said, it's very simple. You guys are just going to watch a short video called Getting Noticed, Why You Need an Online Portfolio, presented by Jacob Minkoff, who at the time was a game designer over at Naughty Dog Games and worked on the Uncharted series. So to get there, you're just going to click on this link and then do a search for Jacob's name, and don't copy and paste it. I noticed for some reason it doesn't work if you copy and paste. So just remember how to spell his name, Jacob Minkoff. And then up here in the search field, I'm going to just do a search for his name, Jacob Minkoff. And it should come up right here at the top, Getting Noticed, Why You Need an Online Portfolio. Here's the video. There's also the slides. I also provided the slides over on the class website, so when it gets to the tests, there will be questions on exam number 5 from this talk. So there you go. That'll help you out using the slides to answer those. But make sure to give this video a watch. It's a great video. Okay, going back to the class, the final project. So the final project is going to be to create some form of architecture, and I've already downloaded the Word document here, archproposal.example.docx, and it looks like this. All right, so I'm going to give you guys two choices here. Number one, you can either go out and figure out what you want to do on your own, but since we're pretty late in the semester, and normally we would have gotten started on this a lot sooner, I'm going to give you guys the option of just doing this as your architectural proposal. Now, before you just hit stop on the video because you're like, okay, that sounds good to me, make sure to give it a watch here because I'm going to demonstrate a couple things that can help you out with the final project. All right, so your final project is going to be to choose some form of architecture from some era. So recall that the eras that we talked about were the pre-classic era, the classic era with the Greeks and the Romans, and the architecture using things like post and beam construction and columns and arches and vaulted ceilings and domes and all that kind of fun stuff. The Middle Ages, we talked about like the churches and the flying buttress and things like that, and Industrial Revolution, things like the use of iron and things like bridges, marketplaces, things like that, and then the modern era using things like skyscrapers. All right, so the main thing is first choose an era that interests you. All right. And if you're not remembering what the heck I'm talking about right now, do go back and take a look at lesson 14, the introduction to architecture and the basic forms, to refresh your memory on that stuff, or just watch the video again to get a refresher on that. Okay, going back to the architectural proposal document. So you can just fill in, let's see, so the arrows down here actually. So that's actually the second thing I want you to choose. The first thing, I probably should have you choose that first. But anyways, the next thing you're going to choose is the order of form. So remember we talked about linear, centralized, and radial orders of form. And think about what type of architecture you want to create. So in this case, I am choosing the Middle Ages as my era. I am choosing a radial order of form, and my structure is a church. So we can see this is a radial order of form. Recall that a radial order of form is a centralized part of the structure followed by linear parts of the structure. So same thing here, a centralized followed by a linear part. And you want to try to choose pictures, and these pictures, by the way, you're not recreating the picture of the thing that you find that fits your era and your order of form and your structure. You're not recreating this brick by brick. You're just telling me, hey, this is kind of what I'm interested in doing. All right, it's something that looks like this. So notice that these two churches look similar, but they aren't the same. They're the same order of form, the same era. They're both churches, but they look slightly different. So you're just kind of telling me here, like, hey, this is kind of in the ballpark what I'm thinking of doing. Okay, next you're going to go on the internet and you're going to find stencils that you can use to do fill in the shape of your surface. So here you want to make sure that you're using materials that I talked about in the video. So for example, there was no use of steel during the Middle of Ages. That hadn't been invented yet. There was no use of iron during the Middle Ages. So you want to find pictures of things that were around during that era to be used. If you're saying the pre-classic era, like pretty much stone, right? And brick, not brick, just pretty much stone. And then of course wood was used to a lesser extent. I'm more referring to monumental architecture during that period, like the pyramids and things like that. You didn't see wood used in that kind of stuff. Anyways, the point is once you choose an era, go and just Google image search for the types of materials that you're interested in using for your stencils. Okay, that's the part everybody usually can figure out pretty easily. The next part is where people start to have problems when they're filling out this form. And by the way, you should download this form and then just simply replace with whatever you're doing. So let's say you're going to make a bridge. You just change this to a linear form. And then you would just say, I am making a bridge. And down here, you could say during the Industrial Revolution. Right? Okay, and then I'm just going to go on Google. I'm going to look for some pictures of some, and you can just literally Google industrial era um, iron bridges, and you'll find all kinds of stuff, and then put them up here to show me that's what you're interested in. Okay? All right. So I'm just going to undo those back to here. Okay. So next down here, remember that the whole point is the story of Daedalus and his son Icarus transcending out of the labyrinth, and the idea that the structure that you're making has a function, and that the symbolism and the shapes that you use in that structure should support the symbolic meaning of your structure. I'm sorry, they should support the function of the symbolic meaning of the shapes should support the function of your structure. There, thank you. That's what I was trying to say. Okay, so down here, you need to indicate what your primary and secondary functions of your structure are. So what is the primary function of a church? It's a place where people can gather and somebody can give sermons. What are some secondary things that are important about a church? Well, we are going to accommodate large numbers of people. We want to provide a sense of security. We want to create a sense of inspiration. All right, and you're going to put in red what the main function or the secondary function of that structure is. All right, and like I said, you don't have to give me 4. You just need to give me at least 1 primary and 2 secondary functions of your building. So going back to the example of a bridge, what is the primary function? The primary function is to span a chasm and connect one side to the other. What are some secondary functions? Well, you could use the same thing to provide a sense of security. If you wanted to, you could even say to create a sense of inspiration, right? By the grandeur of it, the size of it. Like think of the Golden Gate Bridge, right? That definitely creates a sense of awe, or like the Brooklyn Bridge, it creates a sense of inspiration, right? At the same time, think about the shape of the Golden Gate Bridge. It definitely evokes a sense of security. But then this is the next thing. Okay, that's fine that those are the functions. That's what you want your structure to do. But what are the shapes and the symbolism that you're using associated with those shapes that reinforces these functions and allows your structure to transcend? And that's the next part down here is how does your structures design address each of the things that you list up here? Okay. I give you a few hints. I think I mentioned this in the talk. You can Google things like the symbolic meanings of shape. You can also be more specific. You can say, like, for example, with the church, you can look up things like English Middle Age symbolism. You can look up industrial era symbolism, styles, things like that. All right. And then next, this is the part that people tend to get wrong. All right, so notice that I had you put everything in red up here. What you're going to do is down here, you're going to put in blue the type of shape or order of form that is going to reinforce whatever you said that function is. So, for example, we said that we want to have a centralized space where the person can conduct their sermon from, and then we want large linear spaces, think of like the hotel example from earlier, that can accommodate large numbers of people. So notice here that what is in blue, a radial order of form, is what is supporting the functions that I stated above. And notice that one shape can support multiple functions, right? So this one order of form tackles both of these things. Okay, what are some other things that I said? I said that I wanted it to provide a sense of security. So what are the shapes that we associate with security? Well, we know that triangles evoke a sense of stability, right? Stability, security, not exactly the same thing, but close enough to try to reinforce or evoke that sense, as I say here. All right, so we're going to make a triangular roof that runs the length of the structure. What else did we say we wanted? We wanted to inspire the church members. So what are some shapes we can use for that? We can use the radial form that takes on more of the shape of a cross, like we saw in the pictures above, right? So symbolic of the Christian faith, the cross, right? Okay. Down here, we are going to also place a vertically linear triangular spire. So vertically linear means that it's just going to point up and it's going to be tall. All right, and that's going to, again, sort of serve as that idea of connection between the building, the person underneath giving the sermon, and the sky above, the unearthly, the unknown, right? All right, so all of these will serve to satisfy that last function of my proposal, which is to create a sense of inspiration. Okay, so just to summarize, stuff in blue is shapes that have symbolic meaning that support the stuff in red, the function of the structure. All right, so you need to make sure that you have for each thing in red up here, you have to have something that is blue, some shape, and remember you can use that blue shape to satisfy more than one of these things um, based on what your different functions are. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. If you're not sure, you can always just send me an email and just provide specific questions, and I can try to help you out. Last but not least, in your proposal, you're going to create a top, a front, and a side orthographic view of what your structure is going to look like. And I'll explain how to create these shapes in just a second. All right, so what are we looking at? This is me looking at my proposal of my church from the top down. So you're going to, in these text boxes, put whatever you put up here. So this is just all in text, but what I need to see is where you're actually going to address that combination of shape with function. So notice here, I'm seeing linear spaces for the large congregation. That's spaces like here or here. A centralized part from the radial order form where the sermons are given. The overall radial form is an inspirational cross form. This is the directional linear triangular spire to imply connection between heaven and earth to inspire, right? So that was the last statement down here. Vertically linear spire to inspire, right? So that's this piece right here. Okay. Triangular roof, that's this piece right here to evoke a sense of stability or safety. Okay, and then since I have addressed everything, this is just a picture of my church from the side. So again, every little box here is just taken directly from my summary here about what I want my structure to do. Okay, now how do we create these shapes? You can just go ahead and open your document in Word. You're going to go to Insert. And then, of course, you can just delete all this out. Excuse me. You can just delete all this out by selecting it and hitting Delete to get rid of it. And then you can come into here with shapes, and then you can just choose the shape that you want. So let's say that I'm going to make a circular shape. I can choose the circle, and then you just drag and drop it onto the form like so. All right. To create these text boxes, then you can easily scale them using these little scale handle tools. Why is it not giving me that? There we go. So you can easily scale stuff like so. Okay. How do we add the text box? You're going to go to Insert and then Text Box, and then choose a simple text box. And you can just knock this text out and then say something, I don't know, I'm just making something up. Circular shape to evoke a sense of origin. I'm not spelling things correctly. Origin. Okay, and then I can point to the edge of it and then just drag and drop it next to the thing that I am trying to say that does. Okay, and it can be a little tricky because you sort of have to mentally like figure out how it's going to look from the top, the front, and the side. But that's how you're going to fill all this stuff in. And then to make the color, So circular shape, and then you can just go in the little pop-up into here, and then just choose blue. So I know that you're saying that's the shape, and then a sense of origin, that was the function of it, and then you just make that red. Okay. Did it not do it? Of course it didn't do it. There we go. All right, so that's how you can sort of fill out the form to show me what your overall structure is going to look like. Okay. All right, so it's not too hard, right? It's not too hard. You just got to put a little bit of thought into what type of structure you want to build, and then again, what kind of shapes are you going to use to support the different functions that your structure serves. All right, and like I said, you can just go ahead and if you really are just, like struggling with the concepts that I'm giving you right now for this semester only because of the global pandemic, if you want to just turn this in as your proposal, then I will allow you to do that. But I do encourage you to try to think of something that's interesting to you, right? Because this may be a very boring idea to you. I encourage you to try to think of a structure that would be interesting to you and do that instead. Don't just regurgitate what I did. All right, let me give you some tips on how you can do this. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Mudbox and see how we can easily stencil in some of this detail. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just use a basic cube from Mudbox. But remember, just like with the toolbox, you may not have like a standard geometric shape that you're trying to emulate for your structure. So like for example, the toolbox, if you think of the bottom of the toolbox as like the bottom of the building and the top where it's slanted in is like the roof, you may need to do something like that and then make a subdivision model and import it into here, subdivide it up, and then stencil on it, bring that back over to Maya, and then trace off of it to create the low poly model. Exactly the same workflow that you did with the toolbox, no different. All right, but I'm going to go ahead and just use a basic cube for this. I'm going to go to create mesh cube. All right. Okay, this thing needs to get subdivided up a lot, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it up to like 1,000,000. Hopefully my computer doesn't get slow like it always does on you guys. All right, and then next I'm going to go ahead and find something I want to. So say I'm making a section of my church. And by the way, abuse, copy, and paste, right? So like this linear part of the church is exactly the same as this linear part of the church. So you only need to make this once, and then in Maya, just duplicate it and move it over here, right? And remember, you don't have to join everything up. You can make this whole thing one piece and this a separate piece, and then you just move one piece inside of the other. You don't have to like weld everything together and make it all nice and seamless, right? And if you have internal faces or whatever like that, it's not a big deal. So don't worry about that. All right, just worry about making the basic pieces and then bringing them all into one scene and putting them all together. Okay, let's go back to the internet. So for my church over there, it had a couple windows on it. So I am just going to do a search for window stencils. And then I'm going to go to images. And you'll probably find something that somebody has already made, like, hey, look at that. That looks very similar to my church window. And this does have little watermarks on it, but I'm not going to ding you for that. I'm not expecting you guys to go pay somebody for their stupid stencil. So just right click on it and then choose Save Image As. And I'm just going to plop this right down on my desktop, right there. Okay, I already saved it. So no surprise, I've actually already done this before. I'm recording it, right? Okay, so I'm going to go back over to here. And I'm going to go to stencil, and then I'm going to click on that little button and import that stencil that I found off the internet and stole and didn't pay any money for. It's for educational purposes, you guys. You're not going to get in trouble. Where'd it go? There it is. I'm not even going to bother renaming it. Open. All right, so let's see my little window stencil. There it is. So I'm going to just scale it down until it's about the size that I would want it to be on my building. Okay. Gonna use Control Alt to zoom in on both, and then make a new layer. Call it window, and then lightly fill in my window. And you don't need to worry about things like, oh, what about the glass? You got to make it look like that. Don't kill yourself, you guys. Just get the basic shape on there. Abuse stencils. That's the reason Mudbox was invented, and the use of stencils was invented is so that you can quickly and easily add a ton of detail on something. And hey, look, their watermark barely showed up. They can't see it. All right, so that's the whole point of stencils is to make your life easy. Okay, I could be super like anal and like smooth out the edge there because it's kind of a hard line. I guess I am being super anal because I'm doing it. All right, so next let's go ahead and fill in the rest of it. So let's choose some other stencil. Could use something like this rock texture or something like brick. Again, it just kind of depends on you, what you want to do. But again, this is why I want you to actually go on the internet and find different examples of pictures of stuff, okay, that you can bring in there. And then I'm going to just go ahead and scale that rock so it's roughly the same size as, whoa, no, oh, there we go. So it's roughly the same size as the bricks. Let's turn tiling on for this one, and then make a new layer, and then just fill in the rest of my bricks, like so. Try not to go over the top of my windows. Okay. And then try to make it so it's nice and even. You don't have these places where it's real deep. Anyways, you guys got the idea. So, oh wow, that's just Mudbox being Mudbox. It didn't really break. It'll come back. So you can see it's bringing it back right there. So yeah, if it does that to you guys, for me, it's probably because I got the recording software going at the same time. There, now it's back. Okay. All right. Anyways, I guess I missed the bottom when I was doing that. But you guys get the point, right? Is that, yeah, I didn't have to go in to like Maya and like make windows, right? I just found a stencil of a window and put it in there. And this doesn't look great. It's really doing a really bad job of stenciling this in. And maybe it'd be better just to use the brick instead. So I don't know. But anyways, the point is play around with it, you guys. Like, I mean, stencils are so easy. Like if I want to, just drop that thing out and just delete it and then say, well, how does this look with brick instead, right? And like, can I make the bricks more or less match the size of the bricks that are in the picture that I'm using, right? Like so. And you go, oh, hey, that looks a little bit better. It kind of matches more with the stencil that I use for the windows. Okay. All right. And then of course you're going to have to, and I know I didn't do the bottom, but then next you're just going to go ahead and once you're done stenciling everything, just like this, again, the same exact workflow for the toolbox. I'm just going to export this, bring it into Maya, GPU cache it, and then trace off of it using the quad draw tool, and then bring that game model, low poly model, back over into Mudbox, and then export my normal map, and then I can bring that back over into Maya to connect. All right. And then of course, once I have this, I can always use ptext. I can always, just like with the toolbox, step this down to 0, right? And then go into ptext, and then sure. Okay, and then go into and then go find a picture. You don't use the exact brick; it'll look weird. So just use like some type of like, I don't know, some like rough red material. We could try the brick. It'll probably not look good though. Paint tool, because you're gonna get all the lines. And don't try to like line everything up and get it to match perfectly. That'll drive you crazy. Let's go back to paint. New ptext layer. Okay, and then step it back up to wherever I subdivided it to, and then you can start doing your. Looks like I left steady stroke on. And then you can start painting. See, this looks bad because the brick doesn't match up with the picture. So instead, you're just going to want to find something that's like, oh, it looks like I should have inverted it too. The concrete's sticking out instead of pushing in. So I should have used control when I pushed down on it. So yeah, make sure you look for that when you're stenciling. And then I didn't mention this yet, but there's something called the dry brush, which is really cool. You can use that to just paint like a flat color. Like let's say I do want like the brick color. And it'll paint just on the raised or lowered parts. Let's see, undo. It's not coming out. Undo. So the dry brush will just paint on, as it says here, the parts that are raised or lowered. So let's say done. I'm going to undo that. Okay. And then the magnitude can control where it appears. Looks like it's not working great. It's probably because it's sticking out instead of pushing in. Yeah, it's not working really good. All right, so anyways, I wish I had more time to demonstrate that. But the other thing is you want to make sure to use ambient occlusion so that if you do have like places where you have deep cracks, just like with the toolbox, how between the boards on the side we have the deeper parts, you can create ambient occlusion on that to darken them up, and then add those to the paint layer as a multiply, and you'll get all your shadows for free. All right. So there you go. So that's the basic idea of how you're going to create your final project for the class. All right, you guys. So that's it. That was a short video for today. But like I said, since there's only 2 more lessons left in the semester, and we got about 2 weeks, and I'm going to give you guys all the way to the end of finals week to finish your final projects. But I do want you to submit the proposal, whether it's the one that I created or whether it's one that you create. I do want you to submit that here very soon. So I want you guys to go ahead and get that to me by Friday the 29th. All right, so I'm going to create a assignment in there where you can just upload the document for your architectural proposal. All right, hopefully that all makes sense. So again, if you guys need help on anything, and because you're only watching a video for this lesson, and because there's only 2 more lessons left, and just a look ahead, the next lesson is really, really simple. So you should have enough time to be able to get this thing done before the end of the semester, and I'll give you all the way up till the end of finals week to turn in your final projects. Okay? All right, guys, that's it for today. I will see you guys again here soon. Hope you're all doing well. Take care.